Thank you, Robert. I'll just see whether there are any questions. And remember, you can put written material to the Commission for consideration.
Only to say, on behalf of Hugh White and myself, we're disappointed about ASPI.
Thank you very much. Thanks for the opportunity, and thank you to the Commissioners for your effort, your unpaid effort. This inquiry is well overdue. I'm Robbie Barwick. I'm the Chairman of the Australian Citizens Party, and what I'm going to speak about is something that we've had a lot of experience in. Assuming this inquiry concludes that AUKUS is a disaster, as you've heard pretty consistently today, I would urge you to consider that it is the product of an act of foreign interference in Australia. When we wonder why our current Prime Minister, having been given a 24-hour ultimatum in 2021 to accept this deal, and he chose to do it despite the person offering that ultimatum, Scott Morrison, being a deeply unpopular figure at the time, and for which former Prime Minister Paul Keating excoriated him later. He should have been more brave than that. But why did Mr Albanese think he had to accept this deal? Well, in 2024, Dr Alex Bristow of the Australian Strategic Policy Institute wrote an article where he pointed out that the only way you would continue to generate consent of Australians for increased military spending is by talking about China. And Dr Bristow was speaking essentially of the policy of his own organisation, the Australian Strategic Policy Institute. For a decade at least plus, the Australian Strategic Policy Institute has relentlessly demonised China to the Australian people and the Australian body politic, relentlessly. Using the title of the Australian Strategic Policy Institute, which seemed to give it a certain gravitas, it was able to become the ubiquitous go-to commentator pool on the news and television for everything to do with China. And we've had a decade of this organisation relentlessly demonising our #1 trading partner to incite fear and hatred among Australians about China, all of which was funded by the United States government and the United Kingdom government and the biggest weapons manufacturers in the United States and the United Kingdom. The Australian Strategic Policy Institute started off as a taxpayer-funded organisation. I'm sure former Admiral Barry had lots of experience with them. They were a fine organisation under Hugh White, but when they started expanding into US funding, they became a propaganda mouthpiece for the United States government. The military companies that have funded them have received huge, billions and billions of dollars in contracts from the Australian government, right? So this has to be looked at as part of this picture, because we've heard consistent testimony here today about what a disastrous deal this is. How did it come about? You need to look at the United States itself engineering public opinion in Australia to make this come about. I want to say one more thing just briefly. AUKUS is already having a human toll already. And that is, there are 6 children in New South Wales, including going down to the age of 10, and their mother, whose father and husband has been in prison for 3 years and 6 months in Australia. He's never been charged with any crime in Australia. He's never committed any crime in Australia. His name is Dan Duggan. This is his hat, Free Dan Duggan. Dan Duggan trained Chinese pilots in South Africa in 2012 for a few months, at a time when Australia was conducting joint military exercises with China, at a time when the United States was asking Australia if it could also get involved in conducting joint military exercises with China. There was no overtones of anything to do with war with China in those days. Ex-military people do this kind of thing all the time. He was indicted in 2017 by the United States, the new Trump administration. He was arrested by Australia in 2022. He's been in an Australian jail ever since, 3 years and 6 months. 19 months of that was in solitary confinement. Our government has approved his extradition to the United States. They've applied. Now, to qualify for extradition, you have to meet what's the requirement, what's called dual criminality. What you're accused of by a foreign country must be a crime in this country. To meet that requirement, our government applied a 2018 law retrospectively to what he was accused of doing in 2012. The reason I'm raising this in the context of AUKUS is because in September 2023, there was a US hearing of the House Foreign Affairs Committee, and the cranky, very old congressman, you might notice American congressmen seem to be very, very old, they were concerned about AUKUS and whether Australia is trustworthy to guard basically America's technology. And in justifying that we were, the US government officials, in justifying that we were, cited the case of the Australian government's treatment of Dan Duggan as if that was Australia showing an act of good faith to the Americans that we are trustworthy with their AUKUS technology. 3 years and 6 months, he's got no prospect of getting out. He's probably going to be shipped off to the United States to face 65 years in prison for what they're accusing him of doing, scapegoating him. And our government seems to have sacrificed this guy because of this deal. Thank you.
Thank you, Robert. I'll just see whether there are any questions. And remember, you can put written material to the Commission for consideration.
Only to say, on behalf of Hugh White and myself, we're disappointed about ASPI.
Thank you.
Authorised by Craig Isherwood, Citizens Party, Melbourne.